I purchased the 2,300 Canadian dollar OnePlus Open, and I haven't even watched a single video about it before making that purchasing decision. I had no idea what I was expecting going into it. And I know that sounds ridiculous. This is my job, and I should stay informed. But it is very rare that I actually get to take a look at a device without feeling swayed by other people's opinions. So I kind of just wanted to keep it that way. Well, now that I've spent some time with the OnePlus Open, I wanted to tell you what makes this foldable so special and why it's such a big deal. Starting with the unboxing experience though, I was in awe when I realized that the OnePlus Open came not only with an 80-watt charging brick for its 67-watt fast charging, but a pretty pleasing slim case as well. If you know foldables and the accessory market surrounding them, cases can not only be very expensive, but bulky or feel cheap and even have bad tolerances. So having this really nice first-party case just available to you right inside the box made me really feel appreciated as a buyer. And honestly, that's not something that's common at all anymore in the flagship smartphone market. In the hand, the OnePlus Open immediately felt ultra premium to me. I went with the Emerald Dusk model, which does have a glass back rather than the vegan leather on the Voyager Black, and I did this for two reasons. One, I felt like the Voyager Black with that vegan leather might scratch up just a little bit over time, and also I didn't really care about the extra added weight. I figured that the glass might stand the test of time better and I won't be able to damage it as easily. However, it is actually the heavier model at 245 grams versus 239. However, the Voyager Black model is actually 1 entire gram lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And when it comes to foldables, this is genuinely the lightest that it gets, at least here in North America. However, the OnePlus Open has really spiced things up though. Starting with the cover display, we finally get a 20:9 aspect ratio, which is more akin to slab style devices. This makes operating the phone feel very natural, offering a pleasing two-handed experience, and when it comes to apps, all of your content just looks how it should. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and say that the Fold 5 was terrible, as I really grew to like the narrow cover display for one-handed use, especially when it came to how large and thick the Fold actually was. However, if I had to pick one, now that I have the option, I would just hands down go for the OnePlus Open, because I do feel like it just gives you a better experience. Not only that though, but it has better specs as well. Before we go any further though, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. I just want to say thank you so much for the support recently. We are actually getting very close to 30,000 subscribers, and if we can hit that by the end of Christmas, it would just be appreciated. So thank you so much. Anyways, the cover display is a 10 to 120 Hz LTPO3 OLED display with a 431 ppi and a whopping 2,800 nits of peak brightness. If this was the only display on the smartphone, I would be completely okay with that because it is a fantastic one. I'm also just in love with the 6.3-inch size, as I've always been someone who goes for like the pro model phones just to get the most features, and when it comes to this device, I don't feel like I'm making that compromise since I have that inner display as well. When opened, you're greeted with yet another 2K display with LTPO3 technology going from 1 to 120 Hz, and yet again, a 2,800 nit peak brightness, all with a pixel density of 426, which is pretty damn good for a display of 7.8 inches. And I know what I just said was an absolute mouthful, but if there's anything that you need to take away from that, just know that it's pretty damn good. Let's talk about some of the other specs though before I circle around to some other things, because there's a lot to cover. The OnePlus Open has only one spec configuration, and that is 512 gigs of storage with 16 gigs of RAM. It's UFS 4.0, which is really good to see, and it's equipped with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It can do 67 watts of fast charging, and according to OnePlus, can go from 0 to 100 in just about 45 minutes. And I don't think that's actually too far off from what you'd be able to achieve with this device. I've found it to be relatively between that 45 to 1 hour mark, so pretty solid. While this is the first foldable here in North America with actual fast charging, it's also the first one without wireless charging. Do I think that it's a problem? Yes, obviously. While I do understand this may have impacted the overall thickness or weight of the device, wireless charging is something tons of people have already adopted, and to take it away may actually be a reason for some to steer clear of this entirely. Does it impact me though? No. To be honest, when it comes to wireless charging, the only standard that I've accepted in my life is MagSafe. All my chargers are MagSafe, and it wouldn't fit most of the phones that I have anyways, whether a case or an adapter. I just really like the security of MagSafe versus my phone just kind of hanging there. And with this phone having real fast charging, is that even something that's a big enough deal? I guess that's for you to decide. So let me know in the comments, would you rather have fast charging or wireless charging? I mean, we shouldn't really have to choose between the two, but I would like to know what you would rather have. The Open does have a fingerprint reader built into the side of the device, which is very easy to access, not only when it's closed, but unfolded as well. Something that I'm always happy to see because I'm not a fan of in-display fingerprint readers. And thankfully, it's quick with zero issues here getting into my device. OnePlus has also brought back the alert slider. There's now Wi-Fi 7, and of course, USB Type-C with 3.1 connectivity. Lastly, this phone has a 4,805 mAh battery, but I'm gonna go over the battery at the end of the video. What I really wanna talk about is the cameras because of this Hasselblad partnership with OnePlus. And I also wanna go over the software experience as I'm someone who's never actually used Oxygen OS or owned a OnePlus device at all. On the back of the Open, you get a 48 megapixel main sensor, a 64 megapixel 3x telephoto, and a 48 megapixel ultra wide. If those sound like impressive numbers, it's because they are. But how do they perform? Well, I would easily call it the best camera system in a folding device. And there are situations where I do believe that this camera system can actually compete with some other flagships. The main camera has pretty okay low light performance, a nice depth of field, and I'm a fan of the colors that come out of the Hasselblad name. It has kind of like a pixel-esque look where the images tend to be a little bit darker than what you actually see, but the overall images themselves are actually quite pleasing. This is the new Sony Lydia Pixel Stack sensor, which in theory allows the already wide open 1.7 aperture to allow for more light, boosting dynamic range and the overall quality of the image without having to physically have a larger sensor. In practice though, it's pretty good. It's not the best sensor that I've ever used on a phone, don't get me wrong, but it is something that I would happily carry around in my pocket. The 64 megapixel telephoto is a 3x sensor, though due to the high resolution, it also allows you to crop for a 6x digital zoom, which doesn't look that bad. I'm super happy to finally see a periscopic telephoto camera in a foldable here in Canada because it just allows you to get closer to your subject and be a little bit more creative with your shots. I definitely like this 3x camera way better than the one on the Fold 5. Hands down. Now this is what the rear 4K 30 video looks like on the OnePlus Open's main 48 megapixel sensor. And I do have to say that I am pretty pleased with the result of this. I definitely would say that this is video quality that, in my opinion, is better than something like the Z Fold 5. This is definitely usable if I'm in a pinch and need to record something, though I will say that personally, from what I've experienced, these cameras do tend to fall flat in darker environments and in areas where there's a ton of different variants in lights. So, for example, this sky up here is actually blue, but it might look pretty washed out on the camera because the HDR isn't that amazing. I'll form my own opinion on the entire camera system as I spend some more time with this device, but I haven't really been able to go out and take as many photos and videos as I would have liked to. So as of right now, it's just good, and that's okay. Heading to the front though, I almost missed it, but there's two selfie cameras. A 20 megapixel ultra wide on the inner display and a 32 megapixel ultra wide on the cover display. Both can shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second, but most importantly, the inner display's camera is actually really usable, unlike Samsung's hidden camera that's tucked behind a pixel group and looks like a smudgy mess. You really can't go wrong with either of these, and it's nice to see. Although, this is a foldable, so you might as well just use that main sensor. I mean, if you're gonna spend like 2,300 Canadian dollars on a phone, just take photos with the big camera. I don't think all these cameras are needed, but whatever. And so this is actually going to be the front selfie camera of the OnePlus Open, and the first thing that I notice immediately is that it's a little bit more blown out. The HDR isn't exactly as good, and when it comes to video, I don't know if this is something that I would actually use on a regular basis. It is going to get the job done. It'll definitely help share some clips and stuff that you just want to record quickly, but I don't think that this is a camera that I would actually pick up and go towards. Not that it's bad by any means, but given how small this 30 megapixel sensor actually is, it's definitely going to introduce a lot more noise in low light, and it's just not going to look as good. It's going to be a lot sharper and crunchy than the rest of the cameras. Now, changing things up here, this is a little surprising. This is the actual in-display camera on the OnePlus Open. This is not a hidden camera like we've seen on previous foldables like the Z Fold 5 by any means, but it does at least ensure that you're gonna get pretty good quality out of it. And surprisingly, it's not that bad. Okay, that was a lot of camera nonsense, but let me go ahead and tell you about my favorite thing about this OnePlus Open, the multitasking. On this phone, it actually makes sense. Instead of having a split view of an app, which could be pretty restrictive and cause issues with aspect ratio scaling in certain apps, the Open has a very different approach. Instead of restricting you to the display size, it almost makes an invisible border where apps can live until you want to jump into them by tapping on them. This is the most unique form of multitasking that I've seen, and initially I didn't like it because it just felt wrong. But after spending some more time with it, this is probably the best way to do this, and I can totally see Samsung or Google ripping this off just because of how ingenious it is. If, say, I want to browse Twitter and Instagram while I have a full-size browser, I can. Simply by jumping into whichever app I want to visit, the display kind of pans and shifts around, bringing it into my view. It is absolutely amazing, and it does take some getting used to, but I genuinely don't see how Open Canvas can get any better. There's also a dock which shows you some of your most recent applications, shows you some of the most recent items that you have in your dock, of course, and a recent folder, which you can drag and drop things like images into whichever apps. This makes sending emails with attachments or Instagram posts much easier, and I really feel like this has elevated the idea of what a foldable is capable of. Oxygen OS is pretty okay on the other hand. Now, I don't really have any issues with it, but it's just so new to me that it's gotta take a bit to get used to before I form a real opinion about it. There is one thing that I don't like about it at all though, and that's cover display mirroring. So basically the left side of the Open's inner display is gonna mimic everything on the cover display, and the right side is gonna be the second page of the cover display. So this will probably work great for a lot of people, and if you've had experience with the Pixel Fold, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. But for me, I like to have different apps on the inner display than I do on the cover display, and when I open it up, I actually like to have a pretty large widget just front and center that tells me the date, the time, and everything. And when it's closed up, I just like to keep it very minimal so that I can just access what I need very easily on the cover display. I don't like the idea of merging the two together because I feel like I'm very restrictive in what I can actually change on that inner display. And that's not really what Android is about in my opinion. I like having that flexibility. If I wanted to be restricted in what I wanted to do, I would just go buy an iPhone. Okay, it's not that deep, it's fine, but come on OnePlus, maybe in Android 14, please? All in all though, Oxygen OS does look pretty good, and with 4 years of guaranteed software support and 5 years of security updates, I'm sure that we can see some major changes, even maybe to the home screen mirroring. Gaming performance on this thing though has been amazing, of course, due to that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. But I'm actually gonna save this for a whole other video where I cover accessories, performance, and whatnot to give you the best gaming experience on these foldables. So stay subscribed and get tuned for Stay tuned and get subscribed for that. Lastly, as always, the battery. I'm gonna go off the script here for a minute because my opinion actually has changed a little bit since using this phone for a little bit longer. And I'm gonna be honest with you, the battery life isn't that great. Now, there is really a couple of caveats. One, it has only been a couple of days for me, so that battery could actually get better over time. But right now, I'm seeing what is probably around 4 to 5 hours of screen time, and in my opinion, that just doesn't really cut it when I want to daily drive a foldable, or any smartphone for that matter. However, where it does kind of get better, and where I can see this making sense, is that it does have that fast charging with 67 watts. And I am able to charge it really quickly when I need the juice, so I don't really have that like range anxiety, I guess, when it comes to the battery. But it's not like the most enticing thing ever. I really wish that this was just solid right out of the gate because this has almost been the perfect phone, but it's not. And at the moment, the battery just isn't really that good. This isn't just this unit. I did have the Voyager Black if you actually watched my unboxing video, and I did test it out on both because I did choose the green right out of the gate, but I thought maybe there was a problem with this device. It's not, it's both phones. And I don't know. I mean, I'll have an update at a later date to see if this actually does get better, but at the moment, just don't expect the best battery performance out of this device. Quick note though, since overheating has been a huge concern with smartphones, thank you, Apple. This has not had any problems at all, and I just wanted to come on here and clear the air and say that this has had absolutely no issues with its cooling performance. It is almost always cool to the touch and is just absolutely amazing and has been a treat to use. Anyways, expect my thoughts on this device as I spend a lot more time with it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like down below and don't be afraid to subscribe for more content. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.